When Vez read through the mech's specifications, he felt all of his satisfaction disappear. He had accomplished the difficult task of building a highly advanced mech, but his lack of understanding and poor proficiency with the equipment had resulted in several problems with the build. The Caesar Augustus he had fashioned paled in comparison to a factory-standard stock model. Several criteria showed deficiencies in percentage points. Those percentage points represented a chasm in the mech market. When pilots wanted to buy a stock mech, they at least wanted it to adhere to factory standards. There was no way any sane pilot would pay full price for a substandard licensed copy. Vez took the time to search Caesar Augustus and its variants. Although there were few, unlike the real universe, Caesar Augustus enjoyed a little more popularity virtually. Logistical issues such as limited energy mattered little in Iron Spirit's shorter game modes, such as the 1 versus 1 and the 2 versus 2 arenas. The tricky problem of frequent repairs could be resolved with the wave of a hand since the game took care of everything, as long as you had the gold or credits to spend. The players who bought Caesar Augustus tended to be more affluent than normal, but they also demanded more from their mechs. Their willingness to pay more for a higher performing mech didn't help Vez because his own product was currently trash. Still, I have no choice but to get rid of it. I've pumped a fortune of credits into its virtual construction. I need to recoup the costs, at the very least. With no other choice, Vez switched to the sales page and put his first Caesar Augustus up for sale. He put a tentative price of 45,000 credits. The price range made it seem like a deal, even if it didn't perform to spec. Caesar Augustus CA1. Tier 5-star. Base model Caesar Augustus CA1. Purchase price 750,000 gold coins, minus 50%. Premium price 45,000 bright credits. Hopefully some schmuck will snap it up without reading the specifications too deeply. Otherwise, he'd have to go back to the store and lower the price further in order to get rid of it faster. He still lacked a lot of credits and had no reserves left to build another virtual mech. I'll check back in a few days, Vez said hopefully, but he couldn't keep the grimness out of his tone, and one thing's for sure. If I want to untangle that nightmare, I desperately need to become more proficient at electrical engineering. He checked his status and found he had gained enough DP to afford the first skill in the skill tree. As a major skill category, electrical engineering was cheap to learn but expensive to master. But that was a problem for later. He spent 200 DP to acquire the first tier of the skill, which the system called incompetent. Raw information and knowledge streamed into Vez's mind. More knowledge than he could handle nestled within his brain in a span of minutes and almost caused him to black out. He dropped to the floor and tried to withhold his screams while he held his head. Irrelevant pieces of data pressed against his mind. He frightened Lucky so much that the cat jumped onto a cabinet, afraid there might be an intruder. The pressure in Vez's head eased after 10 minutes. He took deep breaths as he tried to regain his composure. Most of the data seemed to have been stored at the back of his mind, inaccessible for the moment. He assumed the subsequent skill upgrades would unlock portions of it. To regain his senses, he decided to take Lucky out for a walk. He and his father had lived near the forests and plains for many years. They had sold his childhood house in the suburbs long ago, and the new owners had been thrilled. His father had then built a second-hand modular workshop outside the town. Its proximity to nature afforded better privacy and ensured that no other property would be damaged if the workshop blew up for some reason. Do you remember life before the system gifted you to me? Vez asked Lucky. The cat meowed and explored the nearby bushes with a puzzled expression. You don't know, huh? Vez said as he stretched his arms and raised his head to look at the wispy, colorful sky. This is my home planet. I've lived here my entire life, apart from when I went to college in the capital. The planet Rittersburg harbored the government of the Bright Republic. They controlled the climate heavily to make it optimal for human life. Sprawling cities, fancy villas, and vast stretches of terrain and indigenous wildlife made it a paradise, an expensive one. but it was idyllic nonetheless. But Vez preferred the rugged and untamed lands of Cloud Curtain, the terraforming corporations that had transformed the ball of rock into a life-sustaining planet had only performed the bare minimum to sustain life. They had left with their fat paychecks even as the incongruities had begun to pop up. The local air smelled different from the Terran norm. The summers never lasted long, and it was cloudy almost every day. But it was Vez's home. He was an inhabitant of Cloud Curtain first, and a citizen of the Bright Republic next. Few woes from the rest of the galaxy disturbed him on the quiet planet. His corner of the galaxy was on the outskirts of civilized territory. It had few stars, not many exotic resources, and only a few small alien polities shared the Bright Republic's borders. Mech battles only happened occasionally, besides the wars between the Republic and the aggressive Vessia Kingdom. The most the Mech Corps had to handle were lone criminals and small bandit groups, too weak to prey on the bigger neighborhoods. It was a life of peace and stability, an enviable state for some people. Vez's father had left the livelier planets of Rittersburg and Bentham to make his home on the snoozy Cloud Curtain. When Vez grew up, he felt no different from his classmates and other people around him. It was only when he had studied at Rittersburg that he realized the rest of the galaxy moved at a different speed. It had both scared and excited him. Eventually, Vez decided to enter the complicated, murky world to fulfill his dream of becoming a mech designer. That decision had brought him into contact with the government, trade associations, suppliers, and more. He had suddenly felt connected to the galaxy, as though everything he did affected the rest of human civilization, as though his existence mattered. What's this crap, I'm thinking? I should go back to work, Vez decided, and he led Lucky back to the workshop. Once he was home, he called Melinda again. "Hi, cousin," he said.
"Hey, Vez, I was gonna mail you back this weekend."
"So, do you have any results you can share with me?" Melinda sent him a few documents over the interplanetary comm.
The Caesar Augustus is a rare beast, so the Mech Corps never officially purchased any of its models. However, it did come into contact with a few models piloted by pirates, fleeing the authorities from the bigger empires. They even captured one intact, more or less.
Did they do anything with it?
The Mech Corps may be penny pinchers sometimes, but they won't throw away a functional mech. An ace pilot took it over and piloted it for a few years before it got embroiled in a border skirmish with the Vesians. It lost its left leg and a chunk of its waist. When it came back to the hangar, the Corps decided it was more trouble than it was worth trying to fix it up. So they sold the rest for scrap.
Damn, so it's gone now?
Yep, recycled down to the seats.
Well, there goes my hope of refurbishing it. Anyway, the Mech Corps must have learned a thing or two about the CA-1, right?
Nothing officially, but I tracked down one of the technicians who serviced it.
That was both impressive and dangerous. Melinda could get in trouble if she harassed a veteran too much.
Anything for you, cousin.
Melinda smiled over the comm.
He said the Caesar Augustus was a bitch to maintain, but he still misses it. He gave me the notes he kept about it. I sent them through this connection, so you should already have them in your storage.
That's gonna help a lot. Thanks for taking the time.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do. Be sure to give me a call and show off your work when you finish the design.
Will do. When Vez returned to his workshop, he perused the documents Melinda had sent. The retired technician had conveyed his thoughts in a haphazard manner, with no apparent order to many of his ideas. Vez spent a lot of time turning the disjointed paragraphs and jargon into something legible. But the results blew his mind. The technician was evidently proficient at improvisation and jury-rigging. He had kept the Caesar Augustus going for years without sourcing official replacement parts from national aeromotives. Though the notes contain no schematics or blueprints, reading about the changes and the reasoning behind them gave Vez ideas for his own customization plans. His newly gained skills in electrical engineering also helped him decode the crude drawings of rerouted cables and shifted systems. The retired technician had spent some of his spare time trying to come up with a better layout for the most problematic tangles. Not many of them seemed viable, but the technician had discovered some optimizations that would make the mech a little easier to maintain. once Vez had digested the material, he felt the urge to work on a design immediately. He quickly switched to the designer and started to incorporate some of his ideas on the Caesar Augustus. He worked on the easy solutions first, moving a few components, sometimes shifting them just a millimeter or else swapping them from left to right. That way he was able to uncross a couple of cables and reroute them through a different channel. When he stepped back to admire his changes, he realized the modifications he had made based on the technician's suggestions had made the mech a little less troublesome to produce and maintain. Now that I've picked all the low-hanging fruit, it's time for the real work. Vez intended to redesign the CA-1, practically from the ground up. Making a few changes here and there wasn't going to cut it, so bit his lip and began to test the viability of more drastic modifications. Some suggested by the technician and others he had figured out for himself after handcrafting its design in the game. His changes only marginally improved the base model. With limited knowledge and a lack of component licenses, Vez faced limitations everywhere. At its heart, a humanoid mech imitated the workings of the human body. Though hundreds of years of progress had made the mech's mechanical workings increasingly more sophisticated, they still adhered to the same rules. If Vez arbitrarily cut out a few cables or messed around with its proportions, he might cause the design to cascade into an unworkable mess, just as it would with an actual human body. Over the years, people started to question whether mechs would evolve to a level that constituted life. Vez hadn't been interested in the philosophical discussions that popped up every once in a while during college. He didn't delude himself by thinking he was God, just because he fashioned new mechs. Vez had always thought his classmates who talked that way treated the mech designer occupation as an unparalleled art form. He had preferred to hang out with the more down-to-earth crowd that treated the job as a means to assist the mech pilots who defended their homes. A week went by, and Vez made some progress. He also earned enough DP to upgrade his electrical engineering skill to novice. Using his improved insights in electrical engineering, he simplified a couple of problematic spots. This necessitated a drop in performance, but what he lost in specs, he gained ease of manufacturing and repair. While Vez had made some minor progress in taming the beast, it still maintained its original wildness and ferocity. It's a long road ahead, but I'm reaching the limits of what my skills and imagination can do. He had only managed to come up with a half-finished design, although he wanted to wait until he could afford a few more skills. He had to validate his design by creating it personally. Without getting hands-on, all his work would remain theoretical. Vez finalized the design once he had reached the limits of what he could do. He named the variant the Nero, after the 5th Roman emperor. Vez knew little about history, but a casual search on the galactic net told him Nero had been a force of nature, and the tyrant's infamy fit nicely with his opinion of the CA-1 and his own recently finished design. At least I didn't go with my initial instinct to name the design the Bastard Son. The system's evaluation of the design was mild, to say the least. All its core systems and armor remained the same as its stock model, so the system gave him a low rating for effort. The only thing Vez managed to pry from the system was a base reward of 10 DP, due to the design being based on a complicated last-gen model. He was ready to start fabricating a virtual mech. When he logged into Iron Spirit and visited the market, he found to his surprise that someone had actually bought his half-baked Caesar Augustus, the Grand Green Road. The username sounded like a complete stranger. Vez checked his friend list and couldn't find the user there. He searched the galactic net, but it only revealed that the player wasn't a celebrity. Who the hell is the Grand Green Road? He asked aloud. Whoever it was, they had saved him a lot of trouble. Whatever. Since the mech sold, I have enough credits to fabricate the Nero. He put the identity of the buyer to the back of his mind and entered the virtual workshop. He was eager to see if the Nero he had produced could match the specs of a standard CA-1.